Our next keynote speaker is the Director General in Digital Europe. And who is better than talking about Europe's role in the digital transformation? A warm welcome to Cecilia Bonefeld-Dahl. Welcome, Cecilia.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Good morning.
So thank you for inviting me here today. I don't know how big an audience we have, but I think we are speaking to towns and cities and people interested in tech all over the world. So thank you so much for having me in here today. So as you said, let me just share my presentation. I am the Director General of Digital Europe. And so what exactly is that? And it's basically an association that represents around 36,000 companies in Europe. And as you know, it's been in tech right now, there's something we call the Brussels effect, which is basically the effect of all policy and regulations on tech basically being born out of Brussels. And this is exactly where I'm based, where I work, but representing 36,000 companies from mostly, of course, from Europe, but also a lot of multinational big companies. My background is that I have around 25 years of experience. I worked in IBM, I worked in Oracle for many years. Then I basically built 2 digital companies myself, traveling in China, traveling all over the globe. Then I became the president of the Danish IT Association years back. It went into exports, amongst others, to support tech companies in export. And 4 years ago, I became the Director General of Digital Europe, which is basically representing the whole industry in Europe. I've been working a lot with AI. So the European Commission basically founded a group 3 years ago on how to approach ethical and trustworthy AI. And I will speak a little bit about the work on this AI and how this has basically founded some of the thoughts on global level. Also, I'm an advisor for NATO on emerging technologies, and I am a member of the high-level group for INSA, who is basically at the moment streamlining all the cybersecurity certifications in Europe. And hopefully, in 10 years, we'll look back and say that many of these rules and the frameworks, they are being aligned by governments all over the world, because it's important to know what Ireland is when we actually work with tech and new technologies. And the more we can harmonize that, many companies are born global, the better it is. I'll return to that. So Digital Europe, as I said, representing 30,000 digital companies. We have 40 associations in Europe, so it's EU plus. Of course, also with UK now, unfortunately, leaving the European Union, but Norway, Switzerland, and other countries too are covered there. And as I said, we also have the big multinationals, everything from Nokia to SAP to Amazon and Airbus. So really representing digital in broad terms. If we look at, I'm going to speak a little bit about digital as a key enabler for innovation. I think we can say that under this COVID crisis, we have really seen that digital is not only for people who are not digital savvy. Digital is like a big disruptor of society. But we have also seen that digital is a huge enabler. It's an enabler for education. It's an enabler for detecting vaccines, analyzing huge amounts of health data. It's the enabler to optimize supply chains when borders break down over, for example, the pandemic. We used satellites to monitor, queues and to communicate where the goods and services could actually be transported in the fastest route, for example, medical equipment and other things. So I think it's the first time that we really see digital not only as a business enabler and being an environment of itself, an ecosystem, but really being blended into society in this crisis. And for many governments, this has meant that they are waking up to saying, oof, what is this? This is an enabler of crisis. This is an enabler of society. It's an enabler of growth. And it's not only a disruptor. So in Europe, this has been, we saw like 10 years back the discussion on the digital single market, a huge focus from the EU on basically harmonizing, for example, telecom regulations, making sure that all the EU countries that you can call at the same rate across countries, etc. So harmonizing the market terms for consumers. And to some extent that succeeded. And for example, today, whether I'm in Germany, Finland, or Denmark, I will be able to make phone calls and use my digital services on equal terms across the 27 different countries. Used to be 28 different countries of the EU. So what can we learn from that? We can, of course, learn from that because EU has practiced basically of harmonization, digital rules across 27 different countries. But we also need this to happen at a global scale. I mean, the majority, as I said before, of companies that are digital are born global, and they really need to grow in a global market. And that's very cumbersome if privacy rules are different, if cybersecurity rules are different, if rules of how to use AI or labels or whatever you might have, standards, digital standards are all different all over the world, because it takes a lot of lawyers and a lot of cost basically to know that and know that you're compliant. So we work, of course, internally in EU in just like boosting the investment and harmonizing the rules and getting the right innovation friendly regulations. But we also work with other governments, with the Japanese, which we have worked for very well with for very long. Hopefully soon with the US administration, that will be back maybe to a bit more normal state where we can start having bilateral discussions on how we work together on this. But of course also with other governments in Asia, all over the world. If we look at Europe, well, we under the crisis came out with an investment plan, and actually Ursula von der Leyen, who is the president of the European Commission, and Charles Michel, who's the president of the European Council, meaning representing to a large sense the countries. They came out with a strategy of using 20% out of the 750 billion euros in the recovery plan on digital, which is really a bold move and really shows how much they understand that digital is basically on the agenda of the recovery after COVID. So what I'm going to talk about is a little bit the investment plan and how to do that. And how we look at data and data spaces, what that really can do for boosting the economy and innovation, and a little bit on regulation for FinTech. I hope this will all be relevant for you. I could speak for hours on these topics, but don't hesitate to also drop me your questions in the chat box, and I'll see if I can get through all of them. So digital skills, if we look at right now, these are actually numbers in EU before the crisis. So we actually already knew that 52% of the workforce will need upskilling. And simply due to the fact that the technological digital transformation is so speedy that they are lacking the skills. And somehow, for many educational systems and for some companies, unfortunately, they have known that this is coming, but the ability to plan for digital skills has really not been brilliant, to be honest. And this is also why Digital Europe is running 5 huge projects of basically to advanced digital reskilling and digital skills. Amongst others, we at the moment reskilling 700 women from what you would call ordinary women position. I'm sorry to say this out loud, but secretaries, others, into cybersecurity specialist and tech specialist. And it's shown to be they're very well organized, and they have this very structural approach to it. And it's actually quite easy to transform those skills over to digital competences, like, for example, in cyber. It's called Women for IT if you're interested. But we have several others. We have them in software skills. We are looking at security skills and others, and running all these projects. Anyway, this is really a major bad news, this reskilling agenda. Why? Because after the COVID, we know a lot of people actually lost their job. And there will be even more people that need digital skills. So our major advice to any government around the world is like, get this right, work with your industry, work with your educational institutions, and make sure that your primary focus is to get everybody into the digital era in a really good manner, and where they can see themselves as a part of the future, because digital is not new. It was here for ages. It might be a surprise to you guys, but it's not to us, and it will go even faster in the future. So I would like to show you a video. So I want to see if I actually can do this. I have learned the hard way the constraint also of digital, which means that I have to do it in a little bit a different way than normal. I'm going to share with you the sound from my headset with this video. It is a great initiative taken in Denmark by ITB, the organization that I used to be a president of, but it's also an initiative that shows that sometimes also businesses need to take the initiative. And this came out of a lot of frustration on children still not having coding classes, still not speaking the only universal language of the world, which is coding. And a lot of businesses got together with the municipalities and basically with companies who gave like, they said like, we need a solution for recycling of plastic. So, you know, they're describing a certain problem and asking, you know, children in schools in Denmark basically to work with that problem, and gave them the teachers to actually teach coding. And great things came from this. And today, actually, 10,000 children has gone through this process, and more schools are joining voluntarily, basically to get these coding classes. And the children and the teachers just loves the work. So, just see if I can get this video on and going.
To use technology, they learn how to use the PowerPoint presentation. They use apps and social media all the time. But very few of them have any idea about how it works and how it is created. So our children today are super users of technology, but they are not able to create with technology.
People and workers in Europe really needs to be fit for the digital age. The world is not standing still, and I think that Europe became complacent. Young people who actually join the school today, or children who join the school today, 55% of them will have jobs in the future that doesn't even exist today.
4 years ago, I started coding class together with a group of IT companies on behalf of the Danish IT Industry Association. We saw that the way that IT is used in school today is very old-fashioned, and it's a very simple way of using IT. By the end of this school year, we will have more than 7,000 children participating in coding class.
It's about really enabling and empowering the children at a very early stage to give them the kind of fundamental understanding on how to innovate through coding in all kind of different situations. And this is what we should do in school.
Part of why coding class is such a big success is the companies. The kids, they love to be in the spotlight. They love to have their work valued by the companies. The companies, they invest a lot of money, time, resources in the kids, and the kids really appreciate that.
I'm actually really blown away about their ideas. Some of the ideas the children came up with is ideas that we have professionals working on right now. They are native digital, but they miss the last piece so they can create an app or the solution themselves. And these classes give them the tools to do this.
det har været sjovt og inspirerende at sidde og lære at programmere sådan nogle slags robotter. Jeg tror godt, at kodning og programmering kan bruges i fremtiden. Vi er selvfølgelig først lige startet på Philip, så vi ved ikke alt om det nu. Men ja, jeg tror godt, vi kan bruge det i fremtiden. Jeg synes, det har været rigtig sjovt. Jeg synes, det har været sjovt at lære at programmere de her spil. Jeg har altid tænkt på IT som sådan noget rigtig nørdet noget. Men altså, nu ved jeg ikke endnu, fordi vi har stadig et par gange tilbage, så jeg ved ikke helt endnu, om det er noget, jeg kommer til at arbejde med.
I think for some students, coding classes of a new way of learning, and some of the students who might not live by the book of the school can learn how to do stuff in a new way, and they can exceed in ways they have not exceeded earlier.
We need the politicians, the government, to make a decision and implement this in all schools. We need it to be a compulsory part of the curriculum in Danish schools.
Because you need to start early on to understand the thinking about it. And it is really a creative, innovative way of looking at the world and not something very specific that you need to learn.
Technology is really changing our world today. And we see a lot of that technology being created in other parts of the world. So if we do not skill up the future generations, we will fall behind, and it will not be us designing the future world. It will be somebody else.
Another way of actually getting to the point where children actually are also allowed into this digital world, and as I said before, EU is stepping up. We do see that now 20% of these 750 billion are actually dedicated exactly to that. We came out with 5 major recommendations. Digital skills and education, focus there. SME digitalization, make sure that you make it possible for SMEs to scale, not only through regulatory harmonization, but also through investment and co-investment, connectivity, infrastructure, build the right safe infrastructure, cybersecurity, and digital transformation of existing industries, and not least the AI. So it takes me a little bit back to AI. So what is it about AI that's so special? And I'm sure I'm talking to people also today that will know even more on the technical things that I do. But I think AI is the first. I mean, there's so many discussions about AI and principles and ethics. And I mean, AI is able to learn by itself. So this is, I guess that's the only new thing about AI that we haven't done before in tech. And this is why exactly ethics are discussed. How do we control something that we don't understand? How do we make sure that we act in a transparent way in something that is a moving target? And basically, we work in the AI high-level group for artificial intelligence in the European Commission. We worked with these 7 principles of trustworthy AI. And just to be super practical, if you try to Google something called Altai, and you can write AI assessment tool, you will find like a guide of 100 questions that is meant for developers, but also for users of AI, basically to assess, are we purchasing trustworthy AI? Have we considered all the things around AI that is quite special, that the data is unbiased, that there is transparency in how we develop it, that we can track changes in the algorithm, that we make sure that we have considered, does this need human oversight in the decision-making process where we use it, for example, of course, in health, FinTech not least. Is it robust enough, and etc. So we came out with this kind of 7-principle framework, but also coming out with that in a way that hopefully you will feel that you can use it. If not, I mean, at least you can feel inspired by it. So Altai, it's called an AI assessment tool. Many of these things, of course, are addressed in the European Commission. On privacy, there is something called the GDPR. The GDPR is a privacy regulation that gives the individual the right to privacy. So in EU, this is a fundamental right, and it's now also described in a regulation, which is GDPR. This GDPR has basically shaped a lot of the privacy discussions, if not all the privacy discussions in the world. Simply due to, this coming very timely. And for, of course, international, multinational companies, this kind of privacy framework has been implemented into all their processes and is therefore also shaping the environment internationally. Hopefully we'll continue talks because if we don't get an aligned framework, we will have disruption in how we can actually transfer data across border, how we can use data, etc., on a global level. So this is one of the things that we're working with. Okay, then what do we do actually that's related to finance regulations? As you see, we are working on something called Mika and Dora. It sounds like two people out of a movie. But basically, the European Commission has proposed an act on digital operational resilience, which basically aims to regulate financial operations outsourced to ICT providers. We all know that banks and others are heavily regulated, but now with these kind of new finance players, they are looking how can we basically harmonize that regulation. Also, there's the MiCA. So it's the regulation for markets in crypto assets, and it brings crypto assets and services within the perimeter of EU financial services regulation, regulating stable coins and harmonizing the European rules on crypto assets. So these are also some of the things we are working with. So we do have players in our membership like Visa, MasterCard, and Baidu and others. This is all for me this time, and I think my message to you guys is three things. Right now, digital will play and is playing a major factor on how we recover from the COVID. Access to data, access to health data, access to data for innovation is going to be one of the major things that we need to look at. How do we build data spaces? How do we give small companies access to data on equal terms with big companies that can afford a lot of lawyers and a lot of integration of data? Whereas SMEs are actually still struggling with the data access. And maybe I didn't mention it here, but for sure, access to data and building the European data spaces is on equal term as building digital skills. One of the major things that we are looking at, and right as we speak, data spaces are being built on the health sector, finance sectors, and others, basically trying to give that secure data access for smaller companies on equal terms as big companies. So digital regulations and harmonization across border will be absolutely crucial. And of course, digital investments in the basic drivers, which is data availability, skills, connectivities, and etc., will play a major role for how we actually recover after the crisis. Thank you so much for listening in, and thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my presentation. I'm delighted. I hope that you learned a little bit on regulation, on digital, and how Europe is managing its way out of the crisis. Also by actually using digital tools and digital investments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cecilia. That was really, really interesting. Thank you for having this keynote today. We are super thrilled to have heard more about this topic.
Thank you so much.